mistakes. So, last but not least, our final speaker for the day. We got there okay. Most of us in the room probably know that Whiteoaks is based just a stone's throw over the border here, and it has been servicing the city and beyond since 2001. I spent a bit of time back there myself in 2009 as a terrified, scared, unwilling participant, and I had the pleasure of actually going back again this year and meeting with our next speaker. It is our last but by no means least that I'm going to introduce Stephen McLaughlin. Okay, Stephen is currently the Director of Clinical Services at Whiteoak, and after many years in church ministry, he's now worked in the field of substance use for over 12 years. Stephen is, and you'll hear this, passionate about therapeutic support and the importance of that holistic approach to human difficulties. And it is very clear to see that he cares for people. He believes in recovery, and he also believes in the people who support it. So, it gives me great pleasure to welcome Stephen McLaughlin to the stage. Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you, Gary. Someone earlier on said this is like the graveyard shift. This feels like the crematorium now. Well, first and foremost, thanks to Gary for the invitation. Stephen McLaughlin is my name, and I work at Whiteoaks. And a gathering like this, I don't come from the trenches of addiction. We've been privileged today to hear stories from people who have walked the walk. I haven't. But when I was thinking about today and what I would have to say at a gathering like this, the first thing that came to mind, the first thing that I found myself going towards was the word privilege. Because where I work at Whiteoaks, and I'm sure the same for anybody working in this field, in whatever way you do it, there's a tremendous sense of privilege that people are prepared to trust themselves, their lives, almost their hope, by coming into a place where they believe something positive will be possible for them. Each and every day, I see people who come in very broken, people whose lives feel crushed. They've been told all the things that are wrong with them. And yet somehow or other, when they walk in there and they open up their raw wounds to you, they do so with that sense of trust. And to be handed that on a daily basis is a huge privilege and something which I hope I never ever get completely used to. So if I'm not someone in recovery, what have I to say? What can I contribute to a gathering like this? First and foremost, it's a privilege to be here because this is such a hugely positive thing to have. I don't intend to bore you with details about treatment. I'm not going to talk about the virtues of harm reduction versus abstinence. I'm not going to rant about funding or what government or agencies should do, because all that stuff is well and truly rehearsed. Maybe the only thing I can really speak about is what I've experienced over the last 12 years or so. In the setting where I work, where people who come in and the people that I work with, how we together go on a journey with each and every individual. There's been so much learning, and that has been a tremendous gift to me. I think the first thing maybe I want to kind of set out, and this is something I suppose we all really know, is that addictive behavior isn't just restricted to substances or even to something as problematic as gambling. A number of years ago, I remember reading a book by a guy called Damien Thompson called The Fix. And there was one sentence there that sort of jumped out at me. He said, the line between consumption, habit, and addiction is becoming increasingly blurred. And he was really talking about life and our culture today. And one of the examples that he used, of course, was a mobile phone. the way we use it, the way we interact with it, the dependency that we all have on it. But what are my observations? And maybe that's the only thing I can really speak about this afternoon. And I've broken it into a number of themes. The first one is connection or belonging. You've heard some of the speakers mention that before. Paul from the Max Colby group mentioned that. One of the things that strikes me when I'm working with people in treatment is how their lives very often have become incredibly small. That what addiction has done over a period perhaps of years is to make them, I suppose, more and more isolated in their world. They lose interest in what's around them. They lose interest in their family, relationships, their work, other things. And it often gets to the point where the only relationship they really have is with the stuff, with the substance, which gets prioritized over everything else. And that becomes, and I'm sure some of you have had that experience yourself, it becomes a very strange kind of shadow world that you're living in, you're just existing in, where it becomes so difficult to maintain relationships at any real level. I've heard it say that addiction is a narrowing of the things that bring pleasure. So all the other things get lost or left behind, and the only thing that remains is the addiction. Because family and people close to you quite often get tired. They get fed up with the manipulation, the lies. And so you end up very solitary in your own world. So the journey of recovery for any human being has to be about moving out of that and reconnecting. And it's something that we see even in a treatment center when people come in, and quite often mentally, emotionally, physically, they're quite weak and fragile. But even being able to sit down, have a cup of tea, talk to someone, listen to someone, that in itself, just being around people, being able just to have a laugh and things like that, start to bring a person out of their own isolation. And the process of therapy helps where someone then learns, maybe for the first time, to express what they really feel, to look at the stuff in their own lives, not just their drinking or drugging, but also the trauma, the hurt, the childhood, and all the other things that have been part of their story. And the fact that they're able to do that, that they're able then to share that with others, that they can be encouraged and, yes, challenged, all of that helps them to begin to reconnect with other people, and most importantly, of course, reconnect with themselves. The same thing, of course, happens in other places. It happens in the rooms, recovery rooms like AANA. As we've been hearing today, it happens in places like ARC. It happens in Whiteoaks. It happens in Northlands. It happens in so many other places where people gather, where they feel safe, where they open up. Ian McGilchrist, who's an eminent psychiatrist, and it's only in recent times I came across him on YouTube. Thank God for YouTube. He speaks about connecting as 3 areas of belonging. He says belonging to a community, a group, a tribe, belonging in nature. And we heard Paul, people leaping off cliffs and things like that earlier on. And finally, belonging to some kind of spiritual understanding of life that gives meaning and purpose. When a person's in the throes of addiction, as many of you will know, there's a sense of being lost, disconnected, alone. So recovery, if it's of any value, must bring a real sense of reconnecting, of belonging, of engaging. The second term I want to put up is vulnerability. How we all struggle with vulnerability. I feel vulnerable standing here right at this moment in time. It's a dirty word because we're all, especially the males, we're brought up to be strong, independent, capable, all of that stuff. And yet when a person's life is taken over by addiction, in order to keep it going, very often a person has to build a wall around themselves. They build that wall to keep the drinking, the drugging going. And they don't want to know about being vulnerable. But where I notice deeper change and recovery beginning to happen in someone's life, and it might be long after they've left residential treatment, is where a new awareness is beginning to develop. A person's able to reflect honestly on themselves. They're able to struggle with those parts of themselves that they may not have liked and they didn't want anyone else to see or know about. They're able to accept maybe feelings of failure, feelings of inadequacy. But they're able to do that and share that with other people, knowing that it's trusted, it's accepted, and it's valued. So when you've had to face the worst in yourself, when you've had to acknowledge that to other people, when you finally stop running away and hiding and drink, drugs, or whatever it may be, that's when you know that you're deeply vulnerable. And you realize that you're certainly not in control of life's twists and turns. And initially that can be very threatening. It can be frightening, especially to our ideas of ourselves. And I love this quote from a guy called Eric Michael Leventhal, where he says, "We are at our most powerful the moment we no longer feel the need to be powerful." Of course, Leonard Cohen famously said the same in his song, The Anthem. There's a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. And it is through the cracks that very often we come to know and understand who we really are. So in a treatment center, in the process of therapy, when a person's honest enough to reveal the worst of themselves, and that is received with genuine acceptance, not judgment, when a person's willing to reveal trauma and the scars in their life, and it's heard with compassion, then the process of therapy has a power to transform. And vulnerability then becomes a lever for growth and change. And again, it's been my privilege over the years to meet some of the healthiest and wisest people who've been in Whiteoaks. The third term I want to bring up is spirituality. And it's a word that can mean different things to different people. For me, it's very much about how do I see myself in the bigger picture of life? How do I find meaning? What helps me to make sense of the uncertainties of life? What's my anchor in the midst of my own inadequacies and the inadequacies of other people? Traditionally, a lot of people my age and older have found answers in religion and in the accepted truths that maybe were handed down from family. And that continues to be a source of great strength and comfort to many people today. But spirituality is broader than the structures of any religion or any one group. I've read it said that spirituality isn't something you are, but something you do. And it refers to the behaviors designed to free you from the delusion that your life can be controlled and the illusion that you are controlling it. Some of the core practices that we use in Whiteoaks are meditation, mindfulness, yoga, things that are becoming increasingly popular all around us. It supports our belief that any embodied activity done on a regular basis can bring a person to a new awareness of themselves, where being sober and clean today is enough. We encourage people, especially when they're in treatment, to look at themselves, but also to connect with their emotional life, because that allows them to step back from the chaos, from the pressure of the moment, and to reflect on the kind of human being I am. And the hope in that sense is that people then have the space to be able to make different choices for themselves. And of course, connection and vulnerability are also a necessary part of developing a spirituality that is honest and real. And all of this, of course, is wrapped around that big word, acceptance. It's such a huge part, as many of you will know, it's a huge part of the recovery dynamic. How we all struggle to accept what is. I once heard it said that you don't change what is, you change what is next. What is given to you in the moment. What you do with what is creates the next moment. And freedom lies not in changing what is, but in creating what is next. I'm sorry if that fries your head a wee bit. Rami Shapiro, again, somebody that I kind of look to, writes about recovery very well. And he says, just because I cannot control the sea doesn't mean I can't learn to swim in it. Just because I can't manage the wind doesn't mean I can't tap into its power. Just because I cannot manage my life doesn't mean I can't live it justly and with compassion. So manageability and control are beyond me, but living wisely and well are not. So I'm here, I suppose, this afternoon because I am fortunate that on a daily basis, I see people who are prepared to have a faith that allows them to move beyond their fears and questions and to commit themselves to a process which leads them somewhere that perhaps they're not really sure of. It's a faith, not necessarily a structured belief, but a faith that something better is possible for them. And they'll go through great pain and personal suffering just to move in that direction. And certainly they welcome the companionship, the support, the love and friendship of others. And that's where the whole movement of recovery is very much a we. And I'm just looking over at the poster here at the end of the stage. We are. And in the 12 steps, the first word is we. You don't find the word I. So it's that sense of journeying together where people are encouraged and supported. And for me, in the work that I do, if a person doesn't feel welcomed when they come in to treatment or ask for help, if someone doesn't feel safe or accepted, then we are failing. Yes, we have to challenge addictive behavior, and that's not always easy. We have to be honest about the impact that the addiction has had on them, and especially on people close to them, particularly when there's children involved. But it's also really, really important that we enable someone to see and to believe in their own worth and dignity. And central to that process is truth-telling, where I own my truth and take responsibility for it, which again is basically step one of the 12 steps. Anna Lemke, who wrote a book a few years ago called Dopamine Nation. Again, it's something that I find myself going back to time and time again. She speaks as a neuroscientist, and she talks about truth-telling as wakening up the prefrontal cortex of the brain. And she says that that's the part of the brain that gets shut down in addiction. So truth-telling, honesty, brutal honesty, is a way of wakening that up. For what it's worth, I also believe, and this is, I suppose, what the days like today can be about as well, we've got to ask deeper questions of addiction. And in particular, the extent in our own communities, in our culture. And Donna referred to it just earlier. It's disturbing. Yes, we can all be very busy, very engaged, doing our best in the work that we do, and more resources are always needed. But surely there's also a need to ask questions of ourselves, of our communities, of the lives that we are creating. And for me, it brings to mind that fable, maybe you've heard it before, about the wee town called Downstream, where they noticed bodies beginning to float down the river past them. And initially, they were very busy trying to rescue people out of the river. But the more they did it, the more bodies that appeared. Until finally someone decided that they needed to look upstream and investigate why it was that bodies were going into the river in the first place. While there are always individual circumstances in every person's story of addiction, be it their background, be it family, be it trauma, whatever it may be, somewhere among us we've also got to talk about the kind of environment that we're creating. And I think that that's where recovery communities, groups like ARC, treatment centres, many, many other agencies, even in a place like Derry and beyond, we've all got a role to play, because the very heart and essence of any of what we do is about making a person welcome, offering them a safe space, listening to them, accepting them, encouraging them to be honest. And those are the very qualities that very often our society, our communities, our families are crying out for. And that's the spiritual dimension of addiction, which takes it beyond being merely a health crisis. My last theme that I want to mention is gratitude. Anyone that I see and know and call a friend who's in good recovery is someone in whom I see the presence of gratitude. If you've been in the rooms, if you've been among people, you'll know that very often they embody what step 12 of the 12 steps talk about, carrying the message to others. And they do so because they're filled with a real sense of gratitude for what's happened in their own lives. There was a book a number of years ago, I remember reading, the title was called Gratitude, A Memory of the Heart. And for me, it sort of illustrated, or it kind of made very clear that when we're grateful, our heart is alive. And when we hold a sense of gratitude close to us, it helps us to have perspective in life. Because life's not easy for any of us, as we all know. Life is difficult, it's challenges. We get hurt, we get bruised, we do so to others. In treatment, one of the things we do every day is we ask people to write down 3 particular reasons for feeling grateful. Now, believe you me, some people were in the depths of treatment and it's getting hard and they're having a rough day and they maybe feel they want to leave and they don't want to go ahead with this. Asking them then to find reasons for being grateful, well, you're almost inviting a box in the face or something like that. But we do so because it's important to develop an attitude of gratitude. It's a recognition, of course, that everything is pure gift. I think it was Einstein who said that the most important question facing humanity is the universe friendly? And ultimately he believed it was. It's always good to quote Einstein last thing at a conference like this. So do I have a receptive heart? Am I willing to see everything as gift? Can I avoid slipping into a mentality of entitlement or being stuck in a place of victimhood? Gratitude helps to pull us out of all of that. And in turn, it empowers us to live our lives as best we can. So, folks, those are the observations that I have been privileged to make over the last 12 odd years. I see people in good recovery who are grateful, people who have a spirituality, those who are aware of and prepared to show their vulnerability, and also people who want to stay connected and belong. Thank you.